This is Terminal World, and I kicked a hornet's nest this week because I thought, we should probably do an episode about media literacy, something that seems like it'd be worth talking about after we talked about aesthetics as politics and covered all the Walter Benjamin shit. But what I forgot is that media literacy is a wildly unpopular subject that everybody hates, so I signed us up for a real
we
slog.
all hate talking about movies.
They're calling it the first YouTube video with negative views.
But you're all coming along with me because as I get older, I can feel myself rapidly getting dumber. And this is maybe my last chance to have a coherent take on this, kind of codified for the way I'm going to deal with media for the rest of my life. So I think when you talk about media literacy, you're primarily talking about interpretation, right? It's anybody who thinks that there is just like one God-given message that can be eked out of any piece of media is kind of like, I don't know, probably a fundamentalist Christian or some other kind of psycho. But when you are interpreting media, I think there's a lot of really easy kind of traps to fall into. And I think a lot of people get caught up in, all of the classic stuff, trying to assign good guys, trying to map their own kind of morality or their own ideological kind of pre-existing situation onto whatever they're watching to make it make sense. People refuse to suspend their disbelief in all kinds of interesting ways when they have an ideological motivation. But I wanted to figure out how we sort of navigate between Scylla and Charybdis, as it were, where on one side you say there is one correct interpretation. Maybe you think it's the author's, maybe you think it's your favorite pundit's interpretation, maybe you think it's yours. But also, I don't want to fall into the trap of saying, well, art means nothing. A book or a TV show has no content whatsoever and can't be judged in any kind of meaningful or constructive way because it can just mean whatever you want it to mean. I think that's patently untrue. I don't think anybody would tell you that Oppenheimer is just a feel-good slice of life movie, for instance. Like, that's just observed.
It's a slice of life anime, right? Oppenheimer's not an anime? What did I fucking watch?
That was that Chinese movie about Karl Marx.
Yeah. Oh, that anime was incredible. But, hey, look, that would be an incredible thing to do a media literacy discussion about, because I think the way that the Chinese Communist Party portrayed Karl Marx is maybe not 100% accurate. I don't know.
And you might be able to learn something about the Chinese Communist Party by watching their interpretation of a thing, which is, I think, what we mean by media. I think that's the thing. It's like we're trying to do an episode on something that is a little bit argued on as a definition at all. Like, how can you, like, with literacy, you would say that means I know how words work and I know what they are and I know I can read. Whereas with media literacy, you're kind of talking about like how, like, on one hand, there's like, how good of an interpretation can I bring up to this thing and like convince other people that it's true? And then on the other side, like, do you have like an understanding of materialism and like what is actually in the thing that you are looking at, and how did it get created, who got created, who's getting paid from its success, or if there is that kind of situation, And I feel like those things are kind of at odds, so it's difficult sometimes to talk about media literacy and be like, this is what it is.
Yeah, there is also sort of like a language problem as well, where it's like, I think a lot more people, like, I think most humans have like a media literacy where it's like, if you show them a film or a piece of art, it's like they'll pick up, even on like a subconscious vibes level, they'll pick up what is going on in it, and they'll maybe like get an emotion or like a feeling or some piece of ideology out of it. Whether they can then tell you what that is, I think is like the harder part, and maybe where media literacy, or like where people see media illiteracy, is if someone watches something and they're like, well, this guy was supposed to be the good guy, but then he died, so what's the point of this movie or whatever?
I'll just go on record and say I find the idea that you need to have a certain level of literacy, not in the literal sense, but you have to be literate in media to understand media. I find that idea deeply offensive because some of the greatest books and movies, I mean, especially movies, are like movies that I've watched. Some in my that I've loved, movies that I've thought were like the greatest movies. I don't think that I needed any media literacy to understand them. They just happened in front of me, and whether through absolutely beautiful visuals or whether through just a profoundly relatable and understandable expression of the human condition, you just get it. I think like a truly great piece of art, like books, right? You read a passage and you're like, oh my God, that's so fucking heavy. That hits really hard. I don't think you necessarily need literacy in media, right? In the literal sense, when confronted with, like, think about the truly great movies of our time, like the movies that are up there because they're visually stunned. Like Lawrence of Arabia is a visually
Batman
stunning
Begin.
movie. You could like
Mystery
understand
Man.
nothing about the politics of like a movie like Lawrence of Arabia, and you can just like look at the desert landscapes and you're like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen for like 2.5 hours or however long it is. So I want to preface this whole discussion with, like, I'll probably spend this episode talking about how I hate the concept of media literacy. As a concept.
Is for people who don't know who I am, I have a Bachelor's of Fine Arts in filmmaking. So I have been through the ringer of these people who want to tell you how to watch movies. And all kinds of art. I mean, like, I went to art school.
Did you come out of it hating those people?
Yeah.
Wanting to impose their like frame of reference and their frame
well,
of
partially,
mind
but
on
I also think that they were wrong about
they usually are.
the stuff that they thought. Where it's like, I disagree with you because I fucking hate Terrence Malick. Like, people are like, oh my God, Days of Heaven is so beautiful. They shot it all at fucking golden hour and it's so gorgeous. That movie is dog shit and doesn't mean anything. Like, I think that there's somewhere in the middle there where it's like the power of art, especially with film, right? Like, you've got audio and visuals like coming at you, is that it can make you feel things and embed ideas inside of you without you really noticing. And I think, to me, and that's true, like, a great movie can do that whether you've seen a movie before or not. But at the same time, sometimes there can be messages or intended themes and feelings that get like encoded in the frequency that you may not know about unless you have studied how things are made. And there's a lot of movies that, especially in America, that come out and are sort of like lauded, and then when you think about them for a little while, they become like the fascism or like, great man, or like, foreigners are evil, like undertones like start to like creep out. Lots of great action movies that I love, like, kind of have, like, I mean, especially as we talked about, like, we've talked about this on before, but like, all through the 80s, it was very clear that every fucking 70s and 80s, every single action movie was like low key or high key, like anti-communist propaganda.
All the enemies were Russians.
Yeah.
Like, they were always like Russians or North Koreans.
And sometimes it was pretty not exactly obvious, where it's like Operation Cyclone was going on and it's like, what are these Muslims doing?
I talked to the guys at work about all those 70s and 80s action movies, and they said they were just about like valor and like fidelity and family and country, so what you're saying doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, because I vibe checked it and it seemed fine.
Well, that's what I mean, is like, I think to a certain extent, like, but again, that's kind of a different thing. I guess what's interesting about this topic is, like, are we talking about the political substance and encoded messages in a piece of art? Or are we talking about like how to perceive art? And like, those are pretty different. For example, like Rothko. I don't really know what Rothko's politics are. I know that a lot of people feel something from looking at a piece of art that Rothko has made.
Mhm.
I don't. And
I don't understand how.
I
Like,
know.
what's going on in their brains. And his politics were just, I like CIA money.
But so it's like, but if they feel something from these like deep color experiments, then it's like, I can't tell them not to feel it or that they're wrong to feel it. But like, I don't think that there's really any data encoded on those waves, is how I think of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's basically just vibes.
It's all stuff
right?
you
The only possibility I could entertain is that like it somebody standing in front of us like, whoa, I've never just like looked at this color before, and I'm looking like the longer I look at this just color splashed on canvas, the more I see like intricacies that are like artifacts of like my imperfect eyeballs, and I'm assigning like emotional value to this because I'm
Yeah.
told that I should because it's worth a lot of money.
And it's
That's
also
the only-
in a museum that you like paid to be in, and that, so they're it's an institution telling you that this is worth looking at. And
That's
it's like,
the only mental model I have of that, you know.
yeah. So I mean, like, that's what I mean about like media literacy. It's like, I think what's important is that like a painting being in a museum, being on a white wall with a little placard and a security guard standing next to it, is a part of the medium, and it is that is the only data encoded, that this is important and this is something that you can do. I'm referencing this is a channel where we tell you stuff. I'm using a model of media that was talked to me about by Mike Rugnetta, who made a video a long time ago called "Do We Really Consume Media" for PBS Idea Channel, and he talked about how he thinks of it as not consuming media but decoding the media.
Right.
There is signal on those waves. Then
Well,
sometimes you can decode it, or sometimes you don't have to, or you don't want to.
And it's an active process, right? So that's why I think the term literacy has kind of stuck around, even though it's kind of imprecise and has a few problems attached to it, which is that like, if you are literate, that means that you can use a book or like use a newspaper to get information out of it. If you are tech literate, that means that you can use a computer or use a phone to like accomplish something, to look something up or make a call or whatever. So I guess when we talk about media literacy, what we're really asking isn't like, how do you watch a movie or how do you watch a TV show?
How do I press play on the VCR?
Right. It's how do you use it? Like once you've seen something, how are you reinterpreting that back into your decision-making process? And like, I think for a lot of people, they get a really large amount of their cultural identity from film and television, because that's where they see all the people who are made up to be, you know, idealized versions of what they themselves kind of aspire to be. So there's a really strong channel there.
They are the Joker, baby.
They are the Joker, baby. They are become the Joker. I am become the Joker, destroyer of fucking literary content.
Yeah. I think especially in America, where it's like this country hasn't even been around that long, and you can trace back like Birth of a Nation made the KKK popular again. So it's like you can trace back, obviously, like racism existed before that movie came out, and slavery and
what?
I don't know if you guys know this, and it's one of those interesting things about trying to like dissect media's place in culture, is that it's like, if you made a movie like Birth of a Nation and there was no history of racism, it would like not mean anything. It has to like reach into people's like ideas of the past and create this like heroic narrative based around racist white people in the South and why they're actually great. And then you need to like have a whole host of ideas about what black people are like, and that has to be communicated in the movie. And it all can like create this cornerstone that people are like drawing from, and then they're passing those ideas on down to their kids. And like, it probably is still like the ripples in our culture are probably still being felt today, where like we would have a different flavor of racism and different flavor of Southern identity if that movie had never gotten made.
Well, and that's why I think it's important to talk about what people get wrong when they talk about the death of the author, because I think Roland Barthes, he's like one of the most debated figures in literary criticism, and I think even just media studies in general, because of an 8-page long short essay that he wrote called The Death of the Author, where he was like, the author's intention isn't the primary driving force of interpretation, and isn't, it's not the main thing that matters. And people all took that to mean that, like, oh, I can just interpret this art to mean whatever I want. But what Barthes was saying, I think, is really a little bit more nuanced than that. He was saying, like, it's not about what the author thinks their work means. It's about what the work itself actually says through whatever components it's built out of. I think he was mostly talking about writing, but it's this thing where people will argue about, would this character have done this? Would this character have acted this way? Did this character have this opportunity to do this thing? And it's such a cop-out if you have any intellectual honesty to go and ask the author, right? I think anybody who reads The Death of the Author would tell you not to ask the author and not to ask somebody else who you think is an expert on the book, but to ask the book. Go and read the book, right? Which is funny because it kind of mirrors like the oldest media literacy argument that's still ongoing, which is arguing about religious texts, right? Who's right about the Bible and what it really fucking says. And a lot of people will tell you,
Jordan Peterson.
You just got to go read it. You just got to go read it for yourself. And they might be up to their own weird shenanigans, but in a way, they're kind of right. Like, whether the author is literally or just figuratively dead, once the work is out there in the world, it stands on its own merits and it stands on its own like ideological content. Constant,
or just on a smaller level, like literally just the plot is sometimes difficult. I guess that's really what in terms of like the non-political or like more ideological side of this, the thing that where I fall down on this is like trying to talk about whether a movie is good with somebody has gotten harder and harder when people can't recall what the plot line was.
Because the Zoomers are spending all their time on TikTok. And you have a piece of media longer than 15 seconds, they can't follow the plot.
They can't follow the plot.
Which I think is a genuine problem, but I personally don't think that relates to media literacy. I think that's a whole different issue.
I think it's interesting because I think it's competing forms of media literacy, right? Like, it's like, I remember being a kid in the 90s and reading a bunch of fucking books, and then I figured out how to get the television set up just right to get a couple more channels. Suddenly I wasn't reading as many fucking books. So it's like there's an attention economy thing happening too, where there's an interplay between people sitting on the couch looking at their phone with the TV on in the background, and then your streaming executives who are like, we got to make stuff that's specifically for being in the background of TikTok videos when people are on the couch.
This sort of came up when movies started getting really fucking bad, and like when
was that?
The whole time.
Well, I would say that they started getting really bad, like unbearably, like
Michael Bay,
nonsensical, with the late 90s and early 2000s with
because even
Jerry
like
Bruckheimer and
big budget
Michael
like
Bay.
blockbuster summer action movies were decent into the 80s, even with the whole like we got to hammer home the propaganda message of the Cold War. Even with that, there's gems throughout the 80s,
Great
even into
movies.
the early 90s.
Well,
then I would say probably the Bush era. For me, looking back, I would think that the Bush era is when movies started to get irreparably shitty, and it went from like, hey, most movies are decent, a couple movies are gems, and maybe only like a third of movies are just straight trash,
right,
to now like 80% of movies are trash, 15 to 18% of movies are like watchable but still pretty bad, and then maybe like 2%, 2 out of every 100 movies will still be talked about in 15 to 100 years.
Right. And I'm definitely talking about like mainstream, we're not talking about like whatever gets made in Cannes and stuff.
Yes.
Like, but I noticed something very specific when The Dark Knight Rises came out, which is where I would have a conversation with somebody and they'd be like, "Oh, did you see The Dark Knight Rises? I thought it was cool." And I'd be like, "What do you think happens in that movie?" Name one thing that happens, like an actual plot point. Like, why does anything follow anything else? Why does the entirety of a Gotham City Police Department get caught under one building? Like, what does that mean?
The sewers, I think. They can't escape the sewers.
Right, because they're all going into the Super Bowl, football area.
Mm-hmm.
And the question I'd always come back to would be like, why does Bane go to the stock market? And like, people who just said that they liked the movie could not tell me like the main point of the main centerpiece of the movie is that Bane steals all of Bruce Wayne's stocks and makes him poor because he robs the stock market. Like, it's fucking nonsense. Like, this is like child babbling. It reminds me of like the Dexter's Lab where like they get a letter from a little kid who's like, "Oh, and then Dee Dee makes all of Mandark's head come down," and like he says, "You're stupid" a bunch. It's like the ramblings of a baby, and then they're just eating it up with a spoon and saying, "I liked the Batman movie," and I'm like,
Batman's on
nothing
screen,
happens in
and
the
he does
movie.
Batman
So
stuff.
in
And
a
then
lot
cool
of ways,
music.
in a lot of ways, you're saying that Dark Knight Rises is an example of this filmmaking, or really more film writing technique, where the filmmaker has decided, I want to show these scenes,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
let's write a loose plot that connects all this together, which is fascinating because like that's a Nolan film, and like Nolan's released films since then that don't fall into that pitfall of like the plot is just a framework for a bunch of like crazy scenes.
Well,
Yeah.
it's like there's this constant churn as an industry develops, and you know, film is no different, where at the beginning it's a lot of investment and it's a lot of risk taking and it's a lot of, I'm not sure, this is a big gamble, fuck it, let's do it. And then like some stuff works and some stuff doesn't, and you end up getting a lot of fucking gems. But then as the industry gets ossified, as it progresses through decades and decades of industrial capitalism, eventually you're trying to figure out how to make bigger movies that make more money by putting less money in. And so you rely on already existing IP, you slash fucking all of the creative direction that happens in the filmmaking process, and you just rely on technical expertise because you know that it produces X result when you put X amount of money into it. And you go from having stories that, like, okay, sure, maybe they're racist or sexist or outdated or whatever, but it was still an artfully crafted movie, to the point now where you have a movie that isn't even capable of saying anything, but it's really shiny, and there's a lot of "that's literally me" factor going on in it. And that's what gets people going. That's what gets people to buy franchised, you know, fucking toys and bumper stickers and go see the 16th fucking installment in the Marvel series or whatever.
Yeah, and I'd argue,
I'm gonna say you basically like exactly described like how the Marvel cinematic universe has like progressed and developed, where it's like as it went on, it was like, okay, we're gonna bring in these like big name directors, but like they won't even actually direct the movie, because it's like, okay, before they even get on set to direct the actors, we've already shot a bunch of action scenes, and then after we make the movie, we're gonna make like 5,000 visual effects scenes, which we outsource to people in a foreign country because there's no union or laws and we can pay them less. So it's kind of like they hire a director who has made like much better movies to come in and be like, okay, just churn out this slop and like put your name on it, and don't actually have any control over like what is in the movie. Because like you were saying, John, it's like it's become so industrialized where it's like a movie always like needed it's not just like one person with a camera is making the movie. There's a lot of technicians and money and mechanisms in play. But there used to be big budget movies where it's like, okay, the director is in charge and they're like the boss of the movie, and everything that ends up on screen, like they're in charge of in some way. And Marvel was like, what if instead there was a factory where the director just kind of slots in, works for 50 days, leaves, and then we spend the other 300 days actually making the movie.
I think what we need to do is we need to separate cape shit from movies that are not
real
cape
movies.
shit.
Well, for sure, but also
right? Beyond just the media literacy conversation, it's like we need to talk about movies. And then cape shit is like something over here, like
it's a different industry.
Any
almost.
superhero movie is just over here. Let's have a separate discussion of that another day, and let's talk about movies.
Well,
But
I would-
even but even in a broad sense, the shrinking creative input of people like directors in a filmmaking industry is really sad, because like if you feed people media with not a lot in it, they will be intellectually malnourished by that media the same way they would be malnourished if they ate the fucking Saweetie meal from McDonald's every single fucking day. And what you're saying, Chris, about like bringing in a director to have them do some perfunctory work so you can slap a well-known name on your movie is exactly like the Saweetie meal. You're just licensing your name to a film franchise.
But I'd argue that all of this analysis is not media literacy.
Okay.
Like what I said about knowing whether the movie is even like sensical
Right.
is
Okay.
Sure.
like being able to tell the difference between Die Hard and Aquaman 2. that's media literacy, where it's like,
Yeah.
yes, they both have explosions and shiny lights and fantasy elements or whatever, and then you can go and talk about like, well, the political undertones, that's kind of different. Like that's a bit of like a that's like a media analysis. But like just in terms of literacy, like do you understand that you are being shown, like keys are being jingled in your face, or you're being told a story? I guess that's what I would argue.
Yeah, I guess like one way to think about that is that it's like knowing more background helps you. It's like a shortcut where it's like,
Yeah.
if you just like, if somebody just showed you like the balance sheet or like a spreadsheet of money in and out for a Marvel movie, and it's like, wow, $20 million from the Department of Defense. Interesting. Just like knowing that if you whatever amount they get for like, you know, money to get to use their specific planes or whatever, like just having that knowledge before you watch the movie would tell you a lot about like the ideological content of the movie potentially, and like maybe make you more skeptical about its like takes on military defense or whatever.
Well, as long as we're talking about being able to not just ideological content, but being able to decode literally the content of what you fucking watched.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea to talk about Squid Game, because Squid Game was an enormous fucking hit. And arguably, I think from a structural, plot-driven analysis kind of perspective, you could argue that it actually had something pretty important to say about the gambling economy and precarity and the way that people are treated when they're in a bad financial situation. Whatever. But then we have guys like MrBeast who come along and they're like, oh, I'll just invent the torment nexus since everybody liked that story so well.
A popular thing. Me too.
Me too. What if it was real?
The whole point of Squid Games is that like the world is horrible and like people are willing to fucking die for a shot at just not even necessarily like riches, but just like financial, like not being burdened by life-shattering debt. And then MrBeast comes along and is like, that's a great idea. I can't imagine what that's what that like who that message in that piece of media is about. But I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna. It's like
I wonder who this sign is for.
A parody of a parody of a parody. Yeah, it's exactly. Who's this sign for? But it's like the supreme irony that like the guy that most embodies like the great evil that the message of Squid Game is about decided to like subsume it into his great evil.
Yeah, and he tweeted a couple of months ago, and it's such a perfect encapsulation of a guy like MrBeast that I just want to read it. He tweeted on March 19th, I have a pilot living in a $2.5 million private jet, and if he doesn't leave for 100 days, he keeps it. A cop/criminal in a jail, and if they don't leave for 100 days, they win $500,000.
Wow, it's
and
so
someone
much
living someone living in a gym until he loses 100 pounds for $500,000. Can't wait to upload these, smiley face with hearts around it.
What?
There's a lot of like. There's so
I
many
thought that
layers
was gonna be darker on purpose. I thought he was like gonna say some Joker like Riddler shit, like I'm a mad genius or something. But he's like, well, isn't this so fun that I'm torturing people?
That's the thing. Okay, so here's a question of media literacy. How self-aware is MrBeast? Does he know what he's doing? Is he literally just a dumb guy who is genuinely perplexed by why everybody thinks what he's doing is like poetically kind of evil, or is he a cynical mastermind who just plays dumb really effectively?
I think he's pretty dumb. I think MrBeast is like very literate in very, very specific and narrow bands of media, which is what will people click on, what will people watch, and what will like go viral. And I think that's basically it. Because hasn't he talked about how he learned, his school was watching YouTube. He just like watched a ton of YouTube videos and like studied the algorithm and like absorbed it and is just like making whatever his understanding of the ultimate algorithmic content. Like he's basically someone who is like
monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah, he's like it's like a cargo cult for what goes viral on YouTube. Or he, I assume, looked at whatever videos were popular before he started making videos and was like, I should make it like that.
You also have to keep in mind that MrBeast is big enough that he has hundreds of people on his various teams for all of his various things that he does that are being like that he pays now to come up with this stuff.
Yes.
I feel like other than like MrBeast is the CEO of a gigantic empire, and he's probably coming up with some big picture stuff. He's like, yeah, what if we did Squid Game? And then he just sicks a bunch of like 100-person team on it.
But it makes me wonder, right? Like, okay, so I think when we talk about media literacy, like the four of us are not what you would call normies, right? Like we consider ourselves to be
Speak for yourself.
Pretty artistically informed.
As you're surrounded by machines no one has ever heard of.
But it makes me wonder, like, Chris, what you said about MrBeast, like maybe he has what you would call like a really narrow but hyper intense, hyper focused kind of media literacy, tech literacy, algorithmic literacy, whatever. And it makes me wonder if maybe like Disney adults aren't in some ways actually kind of geniuses. It's just that they're unfortunately attuned. No, bear with me.
I'm bearing.
He's cooking.
I'm bearing. That sentence is in my head and I'm laughing about it. I'm picturing Disney adults being geniuses. Go on.
They just happen to be attuned to the dominant kind of like cultural logic of the United States, and they just get it. It just makes perfect sense for them. And they're like fucking Rain Man telling you how many princesses have had their designs changed in the last 20 years or whatever.
How I feel about Kanye.
I can't come with you on that journey of Disney adults are geniuses, but what I can tell you, John, is that if you worded that in the right way and tweeted that, you'd get like 100,000 likes.
Yeah, no, I know.
It would go turbo giga viral.
I don't know, but I think that your question about MrBeast is interesting, where it's like, is that a question of media literacy, like whether he knows or not? Like, I think it's sort of like there is nothing to read in his content. Like there is only things around the structure. Of,
right,
like,
but I feel like
if you reading?
I feel like if you're the kind of person who's primed to absorb that type of content readily, it like, okay, maybe this is judgmental, but it reflects a very low overall kind of sense of media literacy. Like you're like, I want the jangling keys. What's this character plot shit? I don't give a damn about that. Jangle.
Yeah. It's like a 98 Day Fiance, which I just learned about the other day, and I can't believe is real and has been around for fucking like 11 years.
I have like a liminal awareness of what that is. What is it?
The premise of 90 Day Fiance?
Okay, this is insane. This is fucking insane.
It exists, but I because
I had the same thing. I was like, okay, 90 Day Fiance is like a thing where it's a reality show about dating or something, right?
Sure.
Like you
That's
gotta like you meet somebody.
Yeah, wait.
Okay, do you know what this is about?
Is it green card marriages or something?
So there is a law that was made.
Yes,
there is a law that was made during Vietnam or right after Vietnam, called K-1 visas, where you could bring your Vietnamese spouse as a GI back, but you had to get married within 90 days or they would get sent back. So this is a reality show about people who know each other online and then move here and have to get married within 90 days and decide whether they're going to be together for the rest of their lives or not.
Whoa. What if you liked someone on the internet, but the country that you lived in was pretty racist.
Which is like the most dystopian, psychotic thing it could possibly be. This blew my mind that there had been a show that was been on for like more than a decade.
Like a decade, yeah.
That was just about like, what if jingoism ruined your life? Psychotic. But we were talking about reality show. Yes, reality shows are things that are just sort of like, there is no literacy to be had. You can laugh at these people. You can start, I mean, there is like some sort of level of like assumptions within those things of like, these kinds of people are worth less. So there's lots of cultural stuff that is sort of baked in, really often not intended by the authors, quote unquote, of a reality show. As someone who's worked on a reality show before, like it just happens because they're your own subconscious judgments or whatever.
Yeah.
But that is stuff that's hard to be like, oh, there's anything to decode here at all.
That is kind of, it's actually interesting that reality TV starts around, because we were saying earlier, like around the Bush era, Michael Bay, like Dark Knight, like 2000s is also when reality TV started. And so maybe there's like a parallel where, because reality TV basically is like no media literacy required to ride, because all they do is like remove any subtext, or like might take a scene where like one character says something and another character makes a face, and they add the sting sound or like dramatic music, and they're this part you're supposed to be upset about, this part you're supposed to be happy about. We're just telling you.
At least from, I think, a media literacy perspective, what's interesting about reality TV shows is the confessional segments where they bring a camera, they stick it in front of one person, and they have them tell you exactly how they feel about what's going on. And I think it really does, like, it discourages kind of critical thought, because what's the point of an actor, right? They're supposed to go out there and embody with their tone and with their physical gestures and with all this stuff that's not just the actual literal fact of the matter, what's going on, and imbue the scene with more information. Maybe it's not super precise information, but it adds to the overall, narrative qualities or aesthetic qualities of the thing you're watching, compared to, watching a confessional on like Survivor or a Real Housewives show or something where they're just like, I hate that bitch. She's horrible. She was so mean to me. And it's like, I could shut my brain all the way off, dog. I could not watch the episode and be as well informed on what happened as anyone who did.
You probably could watch the preview and be like, I get it.
Yeah.
And on top of what you've said about the actor's job, it's also the job, or I guess it used to be before movies started suffering from this reality TV disease, it used to be the job of the director and the cinematographer to shoot the actor in such a way that allowed them to express that emotion. And that, I think, is part of why, like, in early Hollywood, you saw, like, okay, some actors, they were just fucking good, right? Like 30s, 40s, 50s, even in the 60s, like some actors, they just had it. And nowadays you have a lot of actors, actually. I think people are making fun of that actress. What is her name? Bella Ramsey. Is that the one?
I don't know what that is.
That's I think maybe they're non-binary, but the person who's in Last of Us, right?
Oh, Last of Us, yeah.
Bella
and making fun of her appearance, but not really mentioning that, like, there's not really like any acting there, right? Like it's entirely a, let's put this person in a scene and then ham-fistedly make the audience understand that this is how they're supposed to be feeling in this scene, right? Like like I think people are so caught up in the appearance of actors, because
I felt that way about Jon Snow.
I also,
Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
He's kind of written that way, honestly, in the books. I feel like
he was such a blank slate. Actually, Game of Thrones is full of these people, right?
Yeah.
Like full of these B-listers who like don't have it, right? And then some of the characters, like Peter Dinklage, right? Like the guy that played Tyrion Lannister, he's had
him.
like a 50-year acting career. Like up against, like, these people like are in a scene up against each other, and it's like, well, one person totally has it, one person is an actor, and the other person's just like an Eastern European porn actress that like the producers thought would be hot in like a titty scene.
Yeah, Yeah, if you ever watch scenes, I haven't actually seen the movie, but Bram Stoker's Dracula has that in spades, where it's like Keanu Reeves doing a really bad British accent trying to act against Anthony Hopkins, and it's like these are just like two different realms of acting. This is not working out for Keanu, even though Keanu's a great actor, but like in specific stuff.
And that relates to like the job of the director. Like a bad director can end up with a terrible performance out of an amazing actor. Same as a great director can end up with a great performance out of a mediocre actor.
Right. Well, there's an alchemy to it, right? When you end up with the total product of a film or a TV show or even a book, the process of writing and submitting it to editing and taking it to get formatted and getting the cover art done and everything, you're trying to evoke an overall feeling or sensation in the finished product, in the people who consume it. And that's why I think it comes back to what Bryn said earlier, which is that there is a language to these things. There's not a totally well-defined, absolutely discrete language with clear rules, but there is a language. And I feel like what's happened with our media is mostly due to the profit motive. They've gradually taken that language out and replaced it with just kind of, jingling keys, flashing lights, me, he's, my life a movie type kind of, ways to connect to something without actually understanding the story. And I think that's a thing that we've always done as human beings, is forget what things mean, because we have, like, you see the Punisher logo and you see all the cops who like put the Punisher logo all over their cruiser or their like tactical gear or whatever. And it's like the Punisher fucking hates cops. The creator of the Punisher made multiple public statements about it, but it doesn't matter because the Thin Blue Line motherfuckers have taken it over and they've made their interpretation the dominant social interpretation, even though I think people, anyone who even is just a comic book nerd would agree it's a very incorrect interpretation of the underlying work.
Well,
all right.
Let's hear it.
I've heard people say that, and I think that isn't completely a ridiculous thing to say. But like we were saying before, that like the media, this is I'm only saying this because it furthers my point that like media literacy is about materially understanding what is in the text and not leaving anything out. I think one thing that lots of people do when they're making really bad interpretations of fiction is that they leave out a bunch of stuff. Like I this is just on my mind because I tweeted about Asteroid City. I think Asteroid City is a great movie and
Sure.
very Wes Anderson's best movie. Lots of people are like, it's so cartoony. And like when you talk about like the fact that there's a play involved and a gay author and a romance that's behind the scenes, like people just are like, oh yeah, that happened. And it's like people develop takes without like really remembering the text that they're talking about. So with the Punisher is about a vigilante,
Right?
Who, and I mean, I'm not super well versed in his entire arc, but I'm definitely well versed in the Garth Ennis and Warren Ellis arcs of the Punisher. And this is about a guy who is a loner, who's a Sigma, who is really good with guns.
He just like me for real.
He just like Todd for real.
I can hear them jingling now.
he can kill anybody. He's like basically invincible. There's actually a what if thing where Punisher is against the entirety of the rest of the Marvel universe and kills every single one of them.
Does he kill the Superman? No, Superman's different.
Superman's not DC,
but
you don't need
Wolverine. Doesn't he have
kills
Adaman?
Wolverine.
How?
He even kills Goku.
The point is that that's his thing. He is a person who keeps justice through violence with his extra good guns and being very strong with strength. And it's like, it doesn't really matter that in the context of the books, he is doing that because the liberal systems are failing. It's like, that's kind of how cops see themselves, is that they are bringing justice regardless of what the fucking lawmakers think.
That's the thing, isn't it? Like, no matter what story you tell, there's always going to be something to identify with that is unproductive, right? Like, there definitely could be like a good version of a guy who thinks he's the Punisher. But like, no matter how well you write your story, if you include any kind of like conflict with something bad in it, there's a way for people to identify with the bad thing that that you don't like.
And this is maybe like a little off topic, but this is why quote unquote left media ends up being so toothless and cringy, is
Correct.
because you have to be so explicit. I'm thinking about Mark Wahlberg's Shooter from 2006, a great movie.
Great movie.
It's a power fantasy for me specifically. But it's about a guy who becomes a JFK style patsy, and then the CIA is trying to kill the president and start a whole war, and he figures it out and then uses his sniping abilities to kill the CIA and Dick Cheney. And it's great, but it also feels really toothless because it's not for anybody. It doesn't like inspire. They're not saying do this. And so like you get things like it feels like nothing has good political effects in real life because there's power fantasies for the left, and then like actual ways of doing things within a right-wing system for the right.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a big part of what I wanted to talk about, I think, overall, because I remember when The Menu came out and everybody was like, The Menu is such a good leftist, it's a Marxist movie. Ralph Fiennes, he was like, where'd you go to school? And she tells him, and he's like, do you have student loans? And she said no, and he said, sorry, you're dying. And when I saw that, I said, communism will win. And I think it's so fucking silly, because if you look at the plot of the movie, if you actually pay fucking attention while you're watching a film for once in your pathetic life, you'll realize that movie is about a cult who does terrorism. And I'm not saying that it's not libidinally gratifying to see those rich people burn down on that weird little island restaurant, but the idea that you and your workplace should all get together to kill some rich people and yourselves is one of the most unproductive things I could imagine being glorified in a fucking film. And everybody was like, oh, it was so well written, it's such a good social commentary. I'm like, this is the same dipshit who brought you Succession, which is literally just rich people walking around in floor-to-ceiling glass-walled rooms jerking each other off. Like, it makes me fucking crazy. It's like people literally don't care about the events that take place in a film. They just see one scene happen that feels good to them, and they're like, man, A+, you've done it again.
Yeah, The Menu was really bad. I didn't really understand what that movie was even really trying to say. It was just like...
You piss off Ray Fiennes, he cooks your ass.
Well, and
everyone knows that.
I think it's meant to be one of those little like pressure valves for like class resentment, right? Like poor people hate rich people, understandably. They go watch The Menu. They're like, yeah, they stuck it to those rich motherfuckers. I thought
the message of The Menu was that people who work in restaurants are insane freaks.
Well,
that's kind of what I got from it too.
Kind of is, if you just read the text, yeah.
Well, maybe we're the most media literate of them all.
No, I mean,
do any of the rich people kill anyone in that movie? I feel like the rich people are like out of touch assholes, and then someone murders them.
That's what's so confusing about the movie, where it's like, is Ray Fiennes the fucking good guy or not?
Well, no, essentially, it's funny. You said it as a joke, but like, if you watch that movie, I think in a clear-eyed, analytical way, the point of the movie is that poor people are dangerous.
Yeah,
that's what that movie really says. Like,
and
it's not
good.
It's the opposite of class consciousness. It's exactly the opposite. But everybody's lapping it the fuck up and being like, "Oh, finally, a movie that I agree with." No, a movie that you should hate with every fucking ounce of your being.
You put The Menu in the bad column, but you put Parasite in the good column. I kind of feel the same way that you're saying right now about Parasite as I do about The Menu.
Oh, tell me about that.
Yeah, interesting.
Because I thought that the Parasite is about reuniting Korea, right?
That's a better reading to me than the sort of surface level like service employees are going to kill your family if you're a good rich person.
Oh,
you know?
I guess you're right.
I found the movie to be like that surface level reading is actually
similar.
incredibly reactionary.
Well, what I thought the difference was is that in Parasite, that antagonism, the class antagonism between the two different strata of characters in the movie, it plays out naturally, and it's not this big, glorious, kind of like, in the menu, they burn the rich people and themselves in effigy. And in Parasite, people make a series of decisions based on their situation, and those decisions are dramatic, but they're like understandable. And I think depicting an unfortunate outcome of class relations without glorifying the petty futility of it all is what makes Parasite a film that artfully executes what it set out to do, whereas The Menu is a film that I think barely understood what it was setting out to do in the first place.
Yeah. I when I watched now, if you're Korean, please tell me if I'm wrong about this, but like when I saw that movie, the names of the poor people are the names of the rich people are Park, and the names of the poor people are
it's Kim, right?
Kim. Yeah. And then they are sent and have to be in the basement for like 50 years. And like the ending of the movie is that the son grows up and then like lets the father out of the basement. It just felt very much like, oh, we become separated, and like there's this other like worse room that you have to live in, and then like the happy ending is that the house becomes united again. And I thought it was about how North Korea should be free. Right. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's a pretty popular sentiment in Korea.
I think you're right, but there's like an automatic class angle to that, right? Because South Korea is operated by wealthy capitalists, whereas North Korea is run by, a people's party, imperfect though it may be.
Right. And that's a fucking... It's tough. I don't know. I don't know enough about the history. And that's what I mean about like literacy was like, I feel like literacy is just like, does the movie make any sense? And then like your material, like analysis of the movie is sort of a thing you can have fun conversating about, because it's like, well, what happened in history? What do these people mean? Or what are these cultural things, signifiers different?
The thing is though, I kind of don't want to discount the idea that like a film or a TV show could have the potential to have like actually thoughtful, socially engaging, historically progressive content in some form. It's just that I get worried because every example that people latch onto it's like one of the worst things that they could have done. It's like it's actively harmful to the project they're supposedly trying to pursue. And I gotta wonder, right? Like, is this an issue with their understanding of the art itself? Is this an issue with their understanding of the world that contextualizes the art? Or is this an issue with them just having some kind of psychoanalytic problem like all humans have, where we constantly undermine ourselves in whatever pursuits we're kind of going after? And maybe it's all three. I'm not really sure, but whatever it takes for me to understand why people will see the new fucking, Marvel movie come out and be like, finally a movie that says something about what my life is like in America. And it's like, no, it fucking doesn't. Nothing that's come out ever has said anything important about your life.
I mean, John, the newest Marvel movie, I don't know if it's the newest, but there's one with a red Hulk. Orange Cheeto president, red Hulk.
Red Hulk.
I rest my case.
We're finally getting back to the 90s where they would just palette swap things and be like, it's new, blue raspberry flavor.
Harrison Ford is the Hulk.
But I wanted to ask, like, okay, so I have a couple examples of media that I think do a good job of like not being overly direct, but still satirizing class relations or like a certain class strata in a really effective way. And I think The Hudsucker Proxy by the Coen brothers is a great example. I think most people wouldn't watch it and think like, oh, this is a political movie for the working class. But I think if you follow the arc of the character that the whole movie is about, it teaches you a lot of really important lessons about how capitalist industry works and will chew you up and spit you out and turn you into a different person. And then I also think The Righteous Gemstones is just A+, dead on. It's not specifically a class show. It's obviously about like, church mega pastors and stuff. But I think it's like one of the only effective takedowns of rich people because it genuinely shows them to be impotent morons who are incapable of managing an empire that runs itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the thing that is, I agree with you. I think both of those are good examples of nice political movies or shows, but like I think the thing you got kind of get pushback from then is like, so what, right? Like, okay, so you've got like a politically solid movie. Does that matter at all?
Right.
And what does it matter that we have one that's good, that you can be like, well, that's my politics there.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of like it's like asking a meta question or like,
yeah, it does.
Yeah, I mean, because we've been talking about how there's like a sort of like the line is blurry between like when are you just like talking about the political economic reality that like led to this movie being made, and when are you talking about like what's on the screen? It's like there's not an easy line where you're like, okay, this stops being about like the media, and then now you're just like interpreting something about like where the funding came from the movie. Even though that is a good shortcut to tell you a lot about like why the movie may have been made, it still maybe is. It's not like they put the funding on the screen during the movie necessarily, so you have to like use that to color your interpretation.
Well, I think that's interesting because I think that's part of what you get when you stop relying on the author or the director or any other kind of like figure of authority on what you would on interpreting any given piece of media, because once you start to wonder where these elements came from or why they're expressed in a certain way, you enter into like a meta analytical kind of mode where it's like you are asking bigger questions than just, do I like this character or do I think such and such should have won? Now you have formed like a concrete relationship from the content of the media to the content of the world that generated the media. And I think that's really interesting because I think a lot of people would be ready to tell you like, oh yeah, the author might have been kind of telling on themselves when they wrote that. They might have, subconsciously included information that the reader can pick up on that they themselves are kind of suppressing or are not 100% aware of. But I think that kind of subconscious information doesn't just come from a writer or a director. It also comes from the process of development or the way that something got postponed, who was available to work on it at what time, who was paid what amount of money for which services. These things all have like a certain amount of influence on the finished product. So I guess my question is like, if you're really media literate, does it mean that you can perceive just the totality of what the art represents, or does it mean that you can like see through and beyond it to the way that it relates to other pieces of art or historical events or things in your personal life, whatever kind of connections it makes? Because I think as the viewer, your subconscious doesn't differentiate. It thinks everything is real. Like anything that makes an impression on you is real because it generates feelings. So I wonder if media literacy isn't more just like deep, like it can't really be unentwined from, I guess, what you would call like social consciousness, social awareness, and ability to just kind of perceive who you are in your surroundings. And maybe that's what people are lacking in some sense too, because like everyone bitches about people being on their phones all the time, but that's just a retreat. That's because people are scared. I look at my phone when I get scared all the fucking time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that definitely with movies, like I think what I would call you're drawing a lack of delineation between media literacy and what I would call like material analysis.
Sure.
And I would say that like definitely with movies, you kind of gotta. The analysis has to include both. But like with a book, like or music, I don't know. Like we're kind of talking about stories, right? Like so, I don't know. With a book, it's sort of like it's a little bit. There isn't really a lot of. I mean, usually, we're not talking about like Kamala Harris's biography or whatever.
Sure.
Like if we're talking about fiction,
well, we can in a minute, but yeah, for now.
Oh boy.
if we're talking about fiction, it's sort of just like you're just reading what's on the page and what's in the text, and you're kind of like interfacing with somebody's specific parable of what they're trying to say, whether it's about something about humanity or history or whatever. I think that's why it's so tempting to be like, well, what did the author intend? And sometimes very useful to know when you're trying to get at what you just read.
Yeah.
Whereas with movies, it's a lot less useful or matters at all.
Well, I would pose a question to the three of you. I've been thinking this whole hour that we've been recording about my personal belief as far as the concept of media literacy. Like I said at the top of the hour, I really hate it as a concept. If I'm a person who I would like to understand who the person who made this piece of art was, who wrote this book, who made this movie, who wrote the movie versus who directed the movie, how these actors felt about it, this band, what they were thinking when they wrote this music. But even knowing everything that I find out about the people that made the media, the content, the slop, as it were,
As it were.
I still, I feel that ultimately I want the freedom to interpret it how I want. And I'm not really going to necessarily evangelize my take on it, but I'm going to interpret it how I want to, because I believe in my ability to do so, right? It's important to me I'm going to interpret this through my lens. And sometimes if I get a message from a film or a book or a piece of music that I know for a fact the author didn't intend, but I got that message anyway because of my experiences, my life, who I am, I will just say, the author be damned. This is what I believe, and this is why I like this. And it could be completely at odds with the intention of the creator, but I like this piece of art, so I'm going to continue enjoying it in my way. What does that say about me? Because I think there's people, I think a huge number of the media consuming public consumes media that way.
Well, I think it's what we're I think we're given a dichotomy, right? I think especially if you grow up in the United States, because that's the experience all of us are speaking from, you're given a dichotomy, which is you can either be an inscrutable intellectual who says things that sound patently insane about books and movies all the time, or you can be a normie who doesn't think too hard and just kind of takes things at face value. And I think most people are trying in their own way to figure out something that is both sensible, but is also like that explains what they're seeing in the media that they consume. And I think the problem is that if we all just go around being like, well, every other interpretation is all right, but I'll just kind of interpret it however I want to, is that whether we like it or not, we end up falling prey to just reinforcing what we already believe. And it makes us all these hyper eccentric individuals who have trouble talking to one another about media. Like we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, Bryn was like, I have trouble talking to people about what even was in a movie anymore. And that's because I think most of us watch a movie, and even if we're not looking at our phones, we're sitting there and we're not really watching the movie. We're kind of thinking about like, oh, that's like when Phil said that to me last week, or oh, that's like when I was talking to my boss and he was being a real fucking asshole, or that's like when I forgot to tip, or we're not actually paying attention to what happens in the film. We're paying attention to ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with that intrinsically. It's just I think that when that becomes your mode of cultural analysis, you end up falling into a lot of traps, and they're different traps than you fall into if you are somebody who's like, actually the curtains were blue because the author wanted to talk about the crushing weight of sadness after losing a loved one.
Okay, wait.
Here we go.
No, wait. I think I have a slightly different opinion here, because the question was like, what if I don't care what the author said, believed, or intended, and what if I just want to like it the way I like it? I think that is what I'm saying is how it has to be, and I think that, like, I think, Todd, what you were I thought what you were pushing against was like that there's a sort of institutional reading that often gets presented in opposition to like how lots of people interpret things. But what you reminded me of the blue curtains was, I don't think we can have this conversation without David Lynch coming up.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And I think that David Lynch is probably one of the most please author notice me artists that we have. Because nobody knows what he's fucking getting at.
He really doesn't want to tell you explicitly.
He does not want to tell you. He literally doesn't want to tell you. But everyone is like, it's just, he's one of my favorite artists. And he died recently, and some of his stuff is being auctioned off. And people have been posting a lot this week, when we're recording this, about like pictures of his like book collection. And people are like, oh no, now I have to deal with the fact that I know David Lynch knew about like conspiracy stuff and like FEMA camps.
Because of
and, like,
Behold a Pale Horse.
Yeah, Behold a Pale Horse.
You could just watch the show and understand that.
I mean, I think that's true.
I want to see David Lynch's podcast collection.
It's interesting. It's interesting because what I thought you were going to say was that people are getting like, stuff from his film sets or whatever and using that to interpret his work, which, if that is the case, and I think this even extends to looking at the books that he had and using them to interpret his work, which is that if what's in those books was meant to be in the work, he would have put it in the work.
But he did.
And just like you were saying about the conspiracy theories, exactly. When he wanted to, he put it in there. But I think it would be terribly dishonest to go around and find some unused prop and be like, oh, what does this say about the ideas he was having? Well, what it says is that he didn't include it. It's not in there. And that's what you need to be paying attention to, is what actually is included in the content of the piece.
Right. And I think what I was getting at is that, like, growing up liking David Lynch and caring about his work and reading a lot about it, I kind of came down on the same side as Todd a lot of the time, where I was like, these people don't know what the fuck they're talking about, because like this isn't in the movie. Like this isn't in the fucking show I just watched. Like, this is about a small town and people trying to figure out their in the thing, but then also why they're saying all this stuff about the small town, but then they're just ignoring that the Red Room happens, or like they're like, well, I don't know anything about that, so not going to mention it in my analysis of the movie. And I'm interacting with the extreme weirdness on top of it and being like, well, why am I feeling these feelings? What is he trying to tell me, or what emotions does he want me to experience? And he would say, like, whatever you want, like, you're gonna get it, I think, and I think that is really important, that like, if something is well made and you have like a baseline quote unquote literacy of like how things are made and how communication in certain mediums work, then the idea is that you're going to want to feel what he's getting at. And only huge nerds are going to want to like be like me and like get into like what electricity and television and the nuclear bomb have to do with Twin Peaks, which is in the text, but it's like, it's there to be dug up and felt more than it is to be like, this is right or this is wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I think my interpretation of Todd's question is like, the thing that I keep thinking about this whole conversation is that like, one core thing we're talking about when we talk about media literacy is like being comfortable understanding ambiguity and kind of being able to like parse through ambiguity. Because I think we kind of established this at the start. If you have a story where it's like, okay, here's the good guy who only does good stuff, here's the bad guy who only does bad stuff, and then the good guy wins, and the text is just explicitly telling you that, that's not really anything. And we were saying that about reality TV, that it's like reality TV is so stripped of ambiguity by design that it just is like, here is a sequence of a character being happy, here's a sequence of a character being sad. And so because there's no ambiguity, there's nowhere for subtext to exist, there's nowhere for complexities to exist. And I think great art like David Lynch is a perfect example where there's ambiguity because like in real life, these scenarios like morality, evil, all this stuff is extremely complex and ultimately almost unknowable, where it's kind of like you can't just like put a stamp on something and say what its morals are. So it has to kind of be ambiguous. And so I think Todd's question about like, if I watch something and I'm like getting something from it that the author didn't quite intend, I think like only a hack author would be like, there's only one thing you can get out of this, or there's only one exact way to understand this. And obviously there's ways where you can like read way too much into a story and like make stuff up that's not there. But I think like every individual person, like if you're engaging with the ambiguity in something, then you're also bringing all of your own life experiences to it, and you're bringing all of your own personal kind of feelings and beliefs to it. And so you're not going to interpret it like exactly as the author intended, but you're going to get vibes that the author intended, or you're going to get like, you're going to get in realms that the author intended.
Well,
and maybe like,
this is why satire is so difficult.
Yeah.
Because for people is that like sometimes the point is to say something that you're showing something and winking at the audience and being like, yes, I'm saying that this is good, but what I actually mean is that it's bad.
If Verhoeven wanted to satire fascism, he should have had the Sky Marshal slip on a banana peel.
So they know he's stupid.
Yeah, make it extremely clear. Well, it's interesting, that we're talking about David Lynch, because I feel like interpreting film is in a lot of ways similar to interpreting dreams, right?
Yeah.
Like Freud wrote on the interpretation of dreams, and everybody was like, what are you talking about? You can't interpret dreams. Dreams just happen. They just come into the world fully formed for no reason, and you just ignore them. And it's weird. People don't realize that that's really what people thought before Freud came around. They were like, subconscious, unconscious mind. What are you talking about? My mind's completely awake. There's no part of it that I'm not consciously aware of. Don't be ridiculous. And I think people have that same kind of idea about movies, is that they just happen. They just come out. Minecraft just came out, and Chicken Jockey just happened. And it's just a natural, it grew in the yard like a weed.
Someone crafted it. They put 4 pieces of iron and 1 piece of wheat, and you get a movie.
So within this whole discussion on media literacy, something that I hate, I can't stand, and will make me turn off a movie faster than like bad shooting, bad acting, bad audio mixing, bad music, is if I feel that the movie is being too ham-fisted about a message, even if it's a message I agree with. Yeah. Like I think that like part of the mark of a good filmmaker is I should be able to go into your movie with beginner's mind, right? I walk into that theater, I sit down, I start shoveling popcorn into my mouth, right? My brainwaves sort of relax because I'm sitting in a comfy chair. I'm like, I am ready to receive this movie in all its totality, and its visuals and its sounds and its acting and its message. And then I feel like I'm being hammered over the head, right? Like subtlety and nuance, right? Even the most like ham-fisted, even like a Marvel movie, there's subtlety and nuance in that. And sometimes I'm not praising cape shit, right? Like I
just to be clear,
avoid, but those movies are actually a great example of like they can't not hammer you over the head with their message. But if a movie is too like ham-fisted, it is I have to turn it off.
It's unbearable. Well, to quote the robot devil from Futurama,
You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me feel angry.
I had this happen recently. Did any of you see the
Yeah.
movie Freaky Tales?
no,
what's
I
that?
saw a trailer for
No.
it though.
Freaky Tales is
Is it TALES or TAILS? Like, is it furry?
Tales, TALES.
Okay, Freaky Stories.
It's an anthology film, and it's all like 80s nostalgia. Pedro Pascal is in
Oh
it.
no.
And Angus Cloud is in it. It's like genuinely good. The soundtrack's by Raphael Sadiq. And
you
it's
liked
sort
it?
of like no. It's like got a genuinely good cast. Like all of the elements were there for this to be a good movie. It's sort of indie. It's fairly low budget, I think. I'm actually going to look it up right now and see what the budget was.
It doesn't have it on Wikipedia.
But it came out in 24 and it was pretty widely praised. It's got all it felt like a box checking movie. It's like, hey, you have your like quirky heroes who fight Nazi punks in 80s Oakland, California.
Right.
Okay.
And like the sexist corrupt politician, I won't reveal it, but he gets his comeuppance, and it felt like a box checking movie when it's like, hey, you could have like had this message, right? That like, 80s hypercapitalism, and then like, the plucky heroes, they come out on top because they're pure of heart. You could have written this a little more subtly.
Yeah.
I didn't walk out, but I was like, damn.
You saw this in the theater last year?
Yeah. I was like, this is like impressive how ham-fisted they are.
Yeah.
With trying to be like literally, it was literally like, I was like, this is too woke for me. This is wild.
The wokest of us all.
It was too woke for me, president of the Ally Association.
Yeah. No, but it basically like it felt like I was watching like DSA Kung Fury.
Wow, that sounds bad.
Yeah, that sounds bad.
but let me just say, there were moments where it's fucking hilarious. And the
Okay.
visuals were like, it was super 80s and nostalgia, and I think Fred Armisen was in it too.
Oh, I hate Fred Armisen
I think he
so
does
much.
a cameo. No, his cameo is actually pretty funny.
He's always mildly funny. It's part of why I hate him.
Yeah, bomb or be hilarious one time.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, dude.
It's just, but my point is,
Yeah.
if I feel like it's not even a media literacy conversation at that point, it's like, have some faith in your audience
Mhm.
that they'll get the point you're trying to make without you beating them over the head with it.
Faith in your audience is a great way to pivot to the other major talking point I think you have to address in a media literacy conversation, which is that when regular people on the internet like us talk about media literacy, we're talking about movies, right? We're talking about popcorn, baby. We're talking about going to the cinema, watching The Sopranos or The Wire or something. But when analysts and like media people, journalists talk about media literacy, they're usually talking about watching the news. And
Yeah.
I think
Not
there's
doing that.
Who even does that?
Yeah.
Well, that's the
Elderly
thing.
people.
People in a hospice where they can't turn the TV off.
And it's like we've talked a lot about how people get their brains cooked by having media that just generally has less and less going on in it to be absorbed. And so their critical thinking faculties don't get used. And when you don't use them, you fucking lose them. But I think that same thing can be, demonstrably observed in the world of people who sit around watching fucking cable news, whether that's the normie lib or the normie conservative variety.
The normie lib.
Yeah, the two flavors of normie lib variety. But yeah, it's interesting, especially these days, because I think there's a big rise in something that we saw once in the 2000s and we're seeing again now, which is fact-checking sites and things like truthometers. And there's this
The
one
Pinocchio meter.
the Pinocchio meter, right? And there's this one service that advertises with a lot of YouTubers.
Disinformation experts.
Yeah, there's this one service called Ground News that purports to tell you, which way a given news source swings generally, like they're more conservative, they're more liberal, whatever. And I got to tell you, I think that having outlets tell you the bias of other outlets is maybe the most damaging thing you could do to people's ability to discern the bias of an outlet. And that is why I think ground news is the CIA. Surprise! That was the real thesis of this video all along.
Ground news is fed shit.
Absolutely.
I mean, like,
But I mean, wait, real quick.
Go ahead.
The fucking no. I just I wanted to ask is like when people say media literacy in terms of the news, in terms of news media, do they just mean the ability to know when you're being lied to by a $1 billion corporation, like with all the power and facts that, you know, and the ability to make things true when they want them to be? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Is that what they mean?
I think what they mean, well, the polite way to talk about it is bias, right? And bias is basically how much you lie to prove a point that is not true, but that you want people to believe. So yeah, essentially what they're saying is like, how good are people at discerning what's true, and to put it, you know, nicely, what is editorializing in any given piece of news media? And I think if you've been on the internet for like a week at any point in the last 10 years, you'll realize that we're on a slippery slope of people gradually clicking on more and more mobile ads as they try and access the latest clips from the Ingram report or whatever the fuck. So,
well, it feels more and more as we've gone on in this post 2016 world that like it feels like more and more people are admitting and kind of aware that everything has a bias and are choosing the bias.
Right.
You know, they're choosing like, well, I like Trump, and so if this newspaper doesn't like Trump, I'm not going to read it.
Yeah, you know, I think the Browns are going to be real good this year. So if it's not a pro-Browns organization, I'm not giving them my dollars. Okay, I'm loyal to football teams first, God second, country third. Understand?
Listen, the beer brand doesn't like the Browns. Fuck them. I'm making pro-Browns beer, pro-Browns coffee for straight guys only.
We're gonna get them this year, Cleveland.
Yeah, isn't it also really funny that basically 99% of the people like screaming about media literacy as it pertains to the news and as it pertains to current events are the same fucking dipshits that fall for every fucking new psyop that gets rolled out?
Well, yeah, they think that
and
because
report it with a straight face.
Yeah. It's funny because people I've been guilty of this many times in my life. You think because you've seen through X, Y, and Z lies that whatever lie comes next is not going to get you. And here's the thing, whatever lie comes after the ones you've seen through is the one that's specifically tailored to you. So it's like, that's going to be the toughest one to see. So there's a lot of people who have this idea that like they know better than everybody else. And maybe in like certain narrow respects, that's true. But overall, you're just as fucking dumb and susceptible to misinformation as the next person. And if you're not, you're in constant agony all the time. So it's not actually that enticing to be well informed.
I'm actually just in constant feeling cool all the time.
Yeah, it's called the Cool Zone, and it was invented by the 7-Up Corporation in 1994.
You know, something that is interesting, and I'm just kind of like thinking about, is there's a very strong interplay between like fictional media and then whatever you want to call the news. I mean, sometimes the news is fictional media, but between like
Mostly.
purportedly nonfiction fact reporting and then fiction is that like I feel like the ideological content of fiction primes your brain for understanding the news, because like we understand so many things in terms of like narrative and roles. I mean, I don't know. You don't have to look any further than like every liberal who is like, here's why Robert Mueller is actually like Harry Potter or something. It's like people look at something in real life and the first thing they think of is like, how do I apply the structure that is comfortable and makes sense and has clear good guys and bad guys from fiction? And that is part of the issue, is that like for a lot of people, fiction is just like a comfy blanket with very clear-cut storytelling and like clear-cut conclusions. And so they kind of take that kind of like that misunderstanding or that like simplistic viewpoint, and then they apply that to real life. And they're like, okay, who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy?
Right. And I guess as a counter to something I said earlier is that like I kind of do sometimes feel like having media out there that valorizes like working people and the poor and like hates rich people who steal everything, like, is good. I think like it can be really good for a child brain to watch, like,
Yeah.
that, like, you have power in numbers, and like I think that it can be useful and helpful to counteract all of the other horrible messages you get growing up in America. I just don't know how. I feel like I feel like lots of people kind of take it too far, as though it like really matters, but
it's like putting the cart before the horse, right? It's the same thing that happens when people try to have takes on the way that we talk about things like race or gender relations or different types of bigotry or phobias in our culture, which is that they think that if you change the movie or that if you change the way that we talk about something, then the social change will follow. And it's like, it's actually 100% the opposite of that. Like, yes, you can still make media that says things that are important that need to be said under a regressive system, but if you want progressive media, it has to be produced by an overall progressive system. And that's what I think is like a little bit difficult for people to understand, is that, like, again,
difficult for me to understand.
Movies don't just pop up out of nowhere. There's not just suddenly a poster on the wall of your theater because like a movie landed in North America and our researchers went and dug it up. Like, that's not where they come from.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty tough to keep in mind, that it's like, I don't know, like when Andor came out, a show about Star Wars, a fictional rebellion, like
which counts as cape shit to me.
All right.
Yeah,
Star Wars is it's more in the like fantasy realm.
Yeah,
right?
but
So it's not sci-fi. It's basically like knights and dragons and
it's space
castles.
fantasy.
Exactly,
but
with
space.
lasers.
It's cloak shit. It's not cape shit.
Cloak shit. Thank you. That's very good.
Very good. Yeah.
Star slop cloak shit. You guys watching the new Star Slop?
I love cloak shit. But when that show came out, it like was very refreshing and fun to watch the like the cog work, like people putting together a rebellion and executing like spy kind of like this. I mean, it's based off of like shit that Stalin did in the October Revolution. And just seeing that kind of stuff represented, definitely tickled my brain a lot as someone who read a lot about that history and histories of communist rebellions and revolutions. And I really go back and forth in my mind where it's like, this is a Disney product that is being fed to me, someone who has a lot of political opinions that are antithetical to the existence of this product existing. And it does a number on my head, because I'm like, well, it's nice to see. I don't think it's immoral for me to watch it. I don't think it was immoral for them to make it. But besides it not being immoral, like, is it anything useful at all? And I guess I kind of have to come down on no. Like, there can't be a Disney show that is useful for people. But then I guess I on the other hand, I'm like, well, if somebody reads an interview with Tony Gilroy and is like, wait, Stalin did that? I'm interested in the history of the Bolshevik Revolution, and then reads a book that isn't by that motherfucker who wrote Young Stalin. I think that's good. Like, I do think a large media company getting a non-zero number of people to read about like the history of the Bolshevik Revolution is kind of good. So I really don't know. I mean, it's also like, who cares if it's good or bad? But I guess it's difficult to think about, and I'm not sure how to like value it.
Well, isn't this the whole problem with like media criticism in general, is that you have to cap the extent of how far your analysis is going to go in determining if something is good or not? Do I think Mystery Men is a good movie just on
Yes,
a
obviously.
pure enjoyability of watching basis? Yes. Do I think the system that produced Mystery Men and all of the influences in it, that despite its satire of corporate capitalism with the sponsored superhero shit, that still kind of like overrides it and makes it ultimately like a bad product of capitalism? Yeah, but then do I think that maybe there's like possibility beyond that maybe like there's potential in the narrative that could be read by an enterprising individual to give them a better consciousness? Yes, but then like you could just you can keep going. Like it
that's what I'm
literally
saying. I
never
get
ends.
like spirally when I think about it. I'm like, wait, I guess I just want everything I want all of this to be gone, and I don't want to have to think about it.
Reset
because
button.
I just don't want everything to be so entirely saturated in profit motive and exploitation of labor, but it's what we have, and so it ends up kind of acting like this weird hamster wheel.
Right. Well, the last question that I wanted to ask, speaking of spiraling, relevant to media literacy, is about influence and reference. Right. I think we've all had this experience where you're watching something and something creative in it, whether it's like a jingle, a song, a particular scene, a bit of dialogue, it catches your attention and you're repeating it, you're humming it, whatever. And you're like, oh, I just saw this thing in this movie and I really liked it. And you show it to somebody and they're like, oh, that's a reference to this much older thing.
Sure.
And then they show you the much older thing and you're like, oh, that's fucking wild. And then in many cases, you'll find out that the much older thing was actually ripping off an even far older thing than that.
Sure.
And you get stuck in this idea like that there ain't nothing new under the sun. But then also it's like my contact with culture has to start somewhere. And it makes me wonder about like all of the famous movie references that you see in like The Simpsons or Family Guy that growing up, that was the first place I saw it. And it wasn't until much later that I saw some movie from the 70s or 80s that they were referencing. And then it gets really fucked up when you think about the iPad babies and the fucking Elsa Gate shit, watching Spider-Man and Elsa fucking help
Elsa
someone
Gate.
have a baby
Forgot
under a
about that.
fountain in a 3D rendered environment. And you got to wonder, like, what does that kid think Spider-Man is? You know?
Yeah, I'd actually love to, like, somebody who watched that when they were 2, and it's like, did that even color their understanding of Spider-Man? Does the rest of the Spider-Man mythos like override it because it's a lot stronger, or is that just like embedded? And if they watch,
Spider-Man mythos.
well, I'm just
Well,
like,
something
what,
I've noticed with the younger generation, younger than us, like Gen Zers, is once they like
I'm Gen Z, dude.
once they reach like early adulthood.
I am 12 years old.
How did I get here?
A couple Gen Zers that I know, now they've reached early adulthood, are like very specifically seeking out only old media, only old music,
Yes.
only old movies,
Yeah.
because they've been steeped in brain rot. And they're like, whoa. They get one hint. I introduced a Zoomer to the Grateful Dead a couple months ago.
Hell yeah,
That's
dude.
awesome.
And I played like
Why would you do
I
that?
played like Europe Live 72 for him.
Base.
And he was like, "Oh yeah, that's pretty cool." And then like a month later, I was talking to him. And he's like, "Yeah, I've downloaded like 10 gigabytes of Grateful."
He's got
Unbelievable.
dick pics on his fucking phone.
Dick's pics, yeah.
Sorry,
no, but
Dick's
Dick's
pics.
pics.
Yeah.
Dick's pics for the listeners that aren't aware. That's
a
a
Grateful Dead
compilation
thing,
of like the best live performances. They're great. Dick's pics are good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I to answer your question, John, I think Zoomers are, once they like get one whiff, right? They're raised, they're born, they're raised. Gen Alpha is going to be even worse at this, unless they have like
Well-
parents that are like specifically putting on like old music, old TV shows. Like honestly, I think if you're a parent of a young child right now, you should set up a Plex server that has like like Rugrats, Angry Beavers, like 90s cartoons, 80s cartoons, like fucking go back and get like DVD box sets of like 80s cartoons, because they're steeped in brain rot, and so just giving them a fighting chance against the brain rot is so crucial.
I can understand the logic behind that, but I gotta say it's very depressing to me, the idea that there is no cultural future. Like that Zoomers and Gen Alpha, or maybe even some millennials who manage to weather the storm, are not going to turn around and like actually make something worth doing, whether that's by selectively excluding certain technologies or certain like genres of media from their own personal like input is yet to be seen. But like I think about the YouTube guy Look Mum No Computer, who makes beats and like makes all kinds of crazy music just by building shit with electronics and doesn't use a computer except to record the final sounds and make the YouTube video. And it's like I'm fascinated by that like deliberate restriction of a certain set of ideas or tools as an artistic motivator, because it's like if you are an artist now, you are constantly paralyzed by just like you could make any kind of slop. It's all going to be slop, but you could make anything you wanted. And it's like that's a really rough situation to be in as a creative, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's depressing, but I don't think it's not true, unfortunately. Like, I think that we are living in a crumbling empire, and like we're gonna see art that is just like very nostalgic, very backward looking. I don't think that there is a future for this country, and this culture. I think it will die, and I think that that's like where the reactionary, like we need to return, we need to preserve white culture, we need to preserve American culture, is desperate. And I mean, I kind of understand the inclination that it's like you really liked the idea that, you know, the 90s would get refined and then just be for everybody, and everyone would get to go to the old style Pizza Hut and have a Coke with their family, and I'm not even
making soda the old fashioned way.
I'm like literally not kidding. Like I do think that like there is a pull for me. I grew up here, you know, like I'm an American. I grew up in like it's quaint and beautiful to imagine a world where everyone had a shopping mall, everyone had their car, and
everyone could go to Hollywood Video and pick out a movie.
Yeah, like
and Tootsie Rolls were a penny.
Yeah, but I think unlike the 50s, it wasn't forward looking then.
Yeah,
it was expansionary, and it was sort of about like the 50s was like, oh, there's so much stuff on the horizon, and then by the 80s it was sort of like, okay, well, let's just like sort of make everyone have this. Sort of, it was like the most liberal position you could have was like everyone will have 2.5 kids and a picket fence and a car.
There will be no out group. Everyone will be in the in group.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the melting pot or whatever. And that I think obviously was never real. But I think that there is absolutely a nostalgic pull for it, and I think that the only way to like want something like that is reactionary now, because I think we're just living in an empire that's going to end.
Interesting.
I mean, I hope it ends, or it just becomes like worse and worse, and there's only an in group, and it becomes like, you know, just
that's the
the alternative.
It's the cope is that, oh, this will all end someday.
It's late capitalism.
What I would say is
like
even more probable is that it just keeps going forever.
Yeah, but I don't think it won't be the thing that I like, right? It'll be like imprisoning people and, you know, more and more extraction and more like
the Warhammer 40K version.
If it changes, it'll be like Escape from New York, not like cute fascist stuff in the 80s. You know what I mean? Like
it'll probably be like Blade Runner. I think we'll get a Blade Runner.
That's
type
cope
future.
too.
That's cool. I'm gonna be John Blade Runner, the main character of Blade Runner.
You can be John Blade Runner.
I mean, we can't predict the future. I'm just saying that, like, you know, it either ends eventually or it like continually changes into something worse. But like the idea of capitalism, you know, keeping the nostalgic, you know, the 80s Norman Rockwell is the 90s Norman Rockwell that I'm imagining of just like a family sitting around the TV watching a blockbuster movie and like sharing a Pizza Hut. Like that never was going to happen. Gorbachev couldn't make it happen. And like, I just think that that's over, and trying to return to it is cope. And we can either make the future better or it's going to end.
Well,
but I guess I mean, like, the art that will be made is either going to be it's currently backward looking now, because nobody can see a horizon that is good. We can only see a horizon that is scary. It's either Dark Souls, right? Like it's either the end, it's the age of the dark or the age of fire.
In the grim dark future, there is only war. Yeah.
That's Terminator, right?
That's Warhammer 40K.
Yeah, no, it's either you continually burn yourself to keep the tiny flame alight, or you like enter a scary darkness that is something different, but it breaks the cycle.
Well, that's depressing as fuck, and we've gone way beyond the scope.
Dark Souls is about media literacy.
So, to cap off the episode, I want to ask you guys to basically make me feel better. What's actually worth your time in terms of media anymore? Is there anything worth sifting through all of the garbage for and trying to extract some value from? Or is it just
go watch the Criterion collection? Those films are in the Criterion collection for a reason.
What we're saying is trust some established society that tells you what's good.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like, there's a certain critical mass of like film critics where it's like, if this many people say this is an amazing classic movie, this many people can't be wrong, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I think for me, like, I've talked about Citations Needed, Nima Shirazi and Adam Johnson. They get asked a lot. They're a show of criticizing media, news media, and criticizing the news and liberal media and stuff. And they often get asked, like, well, what news should I read? And their answer is often like, well, all of it. Like, you can read the regular news. You just have to understand that you have to read between the lines. That, like, when they're saying, Biden is wringing his hands about talking to Netanyahu, like, that stuff isn't material. That's not really happening.
Right.
You can only get the actual facts from, there's reporters reporting facts, but like the angles of them, you need to be wary of.
You need to be informed on in the first place too, right?
Right.
Because
exactly.
you can't tell what kind of angle shot they're making unless you know who the players are and like what the situation is. So even though we said earlier that like media literacy is not a contest, the solution is basically get good, noob. You need to practice. There's a skill issue.
Like, that kind of applies to me with fiction, right? Like, I think that, like, I'm not gonna not watch something for fun. Like, I think for me, media is about. I think one thing that we didn't really talk about, but I would caution, is that, like, don't use media for escapism. Watch media because it's entertaining, like it makes you laugh or makes you cry or get invested in these little stories, but like, don't separate yourself from what the real world looks like. And don't when you're watching something, try to imagine that what would really happen in real life. Like, compare it not to, like, well, if Captain America was real, would this be happening? Or is this all dog shit, stupid, like, fake stuff? Yeah. And is it based on anything?
But also, don't do that too hard, because then you're like me and you're sitting watching a movie and you're like, that's not real. That would never happen. Scientifically impossible. Breaks the laws of physics. That's bullshit. That's stupid. Because that's like me when I watch like a lot of this.
And also, it's so funny because they say that this guy is the protagonist of this film, but he's not literally me.
He's not you, so how can he be real?
I should be playing a video game. What the hell?
But I think, yeah, watching movies is hard to.
It's
don't
homework.
Just accept everything as whatever is being shown to you as good just because someone made it. But if something interests you, check it out and compare it to stuff that's come before and read about influences if you want, and if you're. But it's just media. I think have a good time. It's not that serious most of the time.
Yeah, I guess I was gonna say, like, if you want to, like, seek out more complexity, seek out stuff that like you're not usually exposed to. Like Bryn was saying, like, I don't think you should just be reading or watching stuff for escapism. And so that kind of means like look beyond like your romantasy or your Harry Potter books from when you were a kid, or like whatever blockbuster movie is out, because like probably none of those are going to really challenge you that much. They're not going to like challenge your worldview. They're not going to present you a situation where you're like, wow, that's actually like an ambiguous dilemma. I don't really know what I would do, you know, because it's like most Marvel movies, most Harry Potter type stories is like, what if there was a guy called Dr. Evil or Mr. wants to kill everyone? Would you be bad enough to kill him? And it's like, yeah, obviously I would do magic and kill him. And real life doesn't really have questions like that. So it's like, it's fine if that's all you want out of like media, but I think you should be asking yourself deeper questions by engaging with media, or like just expanding your worldview and like thinking about stuff you maybe haven't thought about before.
Well, I know a little book people might find challenging. It's called the Bible.
I would find it challenging.
Check it out.
Boring as shit. There's like 5 pages where guys keep getting born and you don't learn anything about them.
Well, the
Pages,
thing with
try
the guys,
books.
Yeah,
the guys
it's like
with
fucking
really,
Lord of the Rings. It's like the Silmarillion, but way worse.
the thing with the thing part about the Bible where guys were living a long time, that's what agriculture did to our lifespans. People used to live a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hunter-gatherers, they lived for 900 years.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Power of acai berries. All right. Well, on
And
that.
that'll be next episode.
The power of acai berries. Brought to you by whatever company makes that slop.
Thanks for sponsoring Terminal World Acai Berries. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Please support us on Patreon. Thanks to all the listeners who do. Here are their names, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
Is that
something
a
like that.
YouTube thing?
We're new to YouTube. Be kind.